extended dry period that has hit us in Ireland over the last number of weeks has led to a significant reduction in grass growth, to the extent that some areas across the country are experiencing a full-on drought. There has been a lot of advice coming from Teagasc in the last few weeks, and we'll sum up some of the advice from Pasture Base Ireland and Grass 10. If we consider the average grass growth rates across the country, it seems quite reasonable at 53 kilos. It's about 33% lower than typically what we'd expect this time of year, but it's still quite okay. But with an average, there is a range, and the range is massive. On drier soils across the country, we're growing approximately 20 kilos in some places, while on the heavier soils, there are farmers growing up to 100 kilos. So where we're growing 20 kilos on average, or maybe even less, it's a really worrying situation. And there are just some tips on what some farmers are doing to manage and cope in this scenario. So the first thing farmers are doing is they're aiming to reduce the grass demand on farms, reducing the grass demand to match or be below the daily growth rate. And this is with an aim to hold farm cover. The effect of holding farm cover is twofold. Firstly, you protect the current cover that you have on farm, and this means that you can maintain a certain level of grazed grass in the diet of the cow. And secondly, where you have a farm cover and you have a cover of grass across the farm, once the rain comes, the recovery from the drought period will take less time. The rotation length is another thing that people are working on. Typically at this time of year, people are holding their rotation length at 18 to 20 days. The aim now is to extend this, and farmers are extending it up to 25, 27 days on individual farms. And what does this actually mean? What this means is, on a 25-day rotation, you're effectively doing something like you do with your spring rotation planner. You look at your farm map, you identify the grazing platform, and you essentially split your farm up into 25 pieces, grazing 4% of your farm per day. So for a 100-acre farm, you're going to graze 4 acres per day. You identify what level of grass is on that portion of the farm, and you supplement in accordance with that. Farmers are supplementing with parlour concentrate, which is standard, and they're also introducing some conserved forage. When we think about concentrate, farmers have upped it depending on milk production and the supply coming from the cow. Farmers are upping the concentrate to 8 kilos. So at 6 kilos, you're talking 3 kilos in the morning, 3 kilos in the evening. Some farmers are also considering putting in palm kernel hulls as a stopgap to get over this period. When we consider conserved forage, we're talking bales, and I suppose a word of warning, where you're putting in bales and they're making up a lot of the diet, we're reducing the protein content of the diet. So where we're ordering some concentrate for the bin, consider upping the protein percentage for this drought period. One thing that some farmers are doing, and it's quite effective, is looking at silage ground. Can you introduce some silage ground back into the grazing platform? Some farmers will have cut silage first cut in mid to late May, so roughly the 20th of May. A lot of those swards have come back, and some of them contain quite a level of leaf, so they're hugely appropriate for grazing if you have that scenario on your farm. Finally, if we just consider water for a minute, again this is advice coming from Grass 10, but what they would have said this week on their weekly bulletin is that a cow will use 2.3 litres of water for every litre of milk she produces. What this essentially means for a 25 litre cow, so a cow is producing 25 litres today, she needs about 60 litres of water. There are other factors at play as a result of the drought. So where you're increasing temperature, you're going to see there's an increase in demand for water. And also, we also must consider the dry matter content of the diet. There is a significant rise in the dry matter content of the diet that cows are receiving currently as a result of the drought, and also the diet type. So where they're having increasing levels of concentrate and silage, they have a much higher dry matter content versus grazed grass. So essentially, water demand can almost double during the drought period. Tune in next week to get more tips on fertiliser plans.